Good afternoon to you. It's 3:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, former U.S. Attorney Brett Tollman will be with us. We'll talk about the left's latest desperate moves to keep Donald Trump's legal problems alive, how President Trump is dealing with that. Brett Tollman talks to us this hour. Lisa McClain, the congresswoman from Michigan, is here at 4 o'clock. She was in that hearing yesterday with FEMA as they were accounting for why they've been skipping the homes of Trump supporters. John Schweppe joins us at 4:30 today. We talk about some of Trump's new cabinet picks, as well as what Speaker Johnson is doing to protect women on Capitol Hill today. And then Congressman Matt Rosendale is here at 5:30 on yet another jam-packed Vince Coglianese show. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Today in Georgia, a verdict handed down for a Venezuelan illegal alien gang member by the name of Jose Ibarra, 26 years old, found guilty on all counts. Judge Patrick Haggard today reading the verdict.
In the state of Georgia versus Jose Antonio Ibarra, case SU 24CR0323, count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 5, kidnapping with bodily injury. I find the defendant guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault with intent to rape. I find the defendant guilty. Count 7, aggravated battery. I find the defendant guilty. Count 8, obstructing or hindering a 911 call. I find the defendant guilty. Count 9, tampering with evidence. I find the defendant guilty. Count 10, peeping Tom. I find the defendant guilty.
The Venezuelan illegal had waived his right to a jury trial. He had pled not guilty to the 10-count indictment. He was found guilty on all 10 counts. You just heard them read out. The judge making that decision after hearing all of the very explicit and awful evidence during that trial. President Trump has reacted to this in these past few hours. He has posted justice for Laken Riley. The illegal who killed our beloved Laken Riley was just found guilty on all counts for his horrific crimes. Although the pain and heartbreak will last forever, hopefully this can help bring some peace and closure to her wonderful family who fought for justice and to ensure that other families don't have to go through what they have. We love you, Laken, and our hearts will always be with you. It is time to secure our border and remove these criminals and thugs from our country so nothing like this can happen again. The judge in the last hour sentencing Jose Ibarra to 2 life sentences plus 27 years in prison for the murder of Laken Riley, the University of Georgia nursing student who he killed in February of this year. Now, it's worth going back down the timeline for a moment about Jose Ibarra, who he is, where he came from. It was September of 2022, dead in the middle of the Biden administration, that Jose Ibarra entered the United States of America right near El Paso, Texas. He was taken into custody temporarily, and then he was, quote, paroled and released for further processing. That is, the Biden-Harris administration in September of 2022 released him into the United States of America. He then makes his way to New York City, and that's where in August of 2023, last year in August, Jose Ibarra is arrested by the New York City Police Department, the NYPD, for posing a threat to a child. He was charged with, quote, acting in a manner to injure a child less than 17 and a motor vehicle license violation. But then the city of New York released him. He was released before a detainer could even be issued by ICE. So once again, now a man who illegally entered the country has now committed a crime in the country, an additional crime in New York City, and then he's released. Now, these releases came despite the fact that there was evidence that he was a member of a gang, that he's a gang member. that he's a member of Tren de Aragua of Venezuela. Allie Bradley confirmed recently, DHS sources telling her that the suspect in the murder of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley is a confirmed member of Tren de Aragua. She says until now it was considered speculation. Of course, he ran around the country free. After his arrest in New York, it was just a month later. So August of last year, he's arrested and then released in New York without any notification to ICE, without any detention, without any attempt to get him out of this country. In September of 2023, the following month, New York City, using federal funding that they got from the Biden-Harris administration, flies Jose Ibarra to Georgia. They flew Laken Riley's killer to Georgia, where he killed her, at your expense. That's what the Biden-Harris administration did. The New York Post reporting, illegal migrant accused of killing Laken Riley took free Biden administration flight to Georgia where he, quote, hunted her down. The migrant Tren de Aragua gang member accused of killing Georgia co-ed Laken Riley ended up in the Peach State thanks to a free flight from the Biden administration, according to a court witness and sources. He took a taxpayer flight from Kennedy Airport in Queens to Atlanta, Georgia in September of 2023. The move was paid for with federal money under the Biden-Harris administration, and it occurred fewer than 6 months before the illegal migrant allegedly hunted down and killed Riley, a 22-year-old Augusta University nursing student, in Athens during a sex attack. Today, following the guilty verdict, the family members had an opportunity to speak to the court, to address the court, to address their daughter's killer. Laken's mother, Allison Phillips, spoke, and here's what that sounded like.
Your Honor, on February 22nd of 2024, our family and friends were given a life sentence without a chance of parole. Jose Ibarra took no pity on my scared, panicked, and struggling child. There is no end to the pain, suffering, and loss that we have experienced or will continue to endure. On that horrific day, my precious daughter was attacked, beaten, and shown no mercy. She fought for her life and dignity and to save herself from being brutally raped. This sick, twisted, and evil coward showed no regard for Laken or human life. We are asking that same be done to him. Laken had a beautiful and bright future. She was smart, hardworking, kind, thoughtful, and most importantly, she was a child of God. She had a personal relationship with Jesus, and she loved being the hands and feet of his hands and feet in this world. She shared her love for our Lord with others through her mission trips, working with elderly at the nursing homes, and through her nursing career. Laken was an amazing friend, sister, niece, daughter, and granddaughter. Anyone who knew her knew about her loving heart. Laken's life was not the only life taken on that day that Jose Ibarra attacked her. The life of her family and friends was taken too. None of us will ever be the same.
That mother has a lot to live with now, a lot of pain to live with. That morning on Thursday, February 22nd of this year, it was at 8:55 in the morning that Laken Riley, even before she went out for that jog, she texted her mother, and she said, "I'm good morning, about to go for a run. Are you free to talk?" That was the text message. Her mom didn't respond via text, so 10 minutes later at 9:03, she called her mother, about 10 minutes later, not quite. She called her mother, and she didn't hear back, so at 9:03 a.m., she left home, and she went to the trail where she would run in the woods. 7 minutes later, 9:10, she was wearing a smartwatch, which showed that she was running at a fast pace when something made her stop dead in her tracks, prosecutors revealed in court this week. At 9:11, a minute later, she calls 911. A 911 dispatcher answered. We played that audio here on this program. And there was no one responding. It was just, you could hear sounds in the background, but nobody was speaking. And then the call would be ended by the caller side. The dispatcher immediately called back. Nobody answered. 9:28 a.m. Riley's watch data still showed her heart was beating at 9:28. The prosecutors saying that her encounter with him was long. Her fight with him was fierce. So from 9:10 to 9:28, that's an 18-minute window of time where she was stopped in her tracks and her heart was racing through that entire time, captured by the device that she was wearing. And that mother is living with the pain of not responding to her, talking to her that morning, and then losing her daughter. She described Jose Ibarra as showing no mercy at all to her daughter and asked today that this monster be given life in prison with no chance at parole, which is exactly what the judge did. Laken's stepfather, John Phillips, also spoke, and he quoted from one of the last journal entries that Laken Riley had written down. I believe this was in December of the prior year. Yes, from December 17th of last year. And here's what she said.
I'm so proud of Laken and the beautiful person she was. And while I could stand here and try to tell the world the things that made her such a wonderful person, as well as the many things we have all been robbed and deprived of, I think one of her last journal entries dated 12/17/23 says it best. So here we go. To my future husband. As silly as I feel writing this, my old small group leader once recommended it, so here I am. To my future husband, I want you to know that I'm thinking about you. I'm working every day to become the best wife I can be. By working through my current relationships to best prepare me for ours and our kids one day. I'm focusing on God and what He defines as a faithful Christian life, and so that I can best embody those characteristics. I pray that you know that it is with my full faith and trust in God that I know this relationship has been handcrafted by Him. I pray that we continue to glorify the Lord, prioritize Him in every aspect of our lives, and raise our family, our future family, to be God-fearing Christians as well. I pray God is the center of our relationship as it is a gift from Him. I thank Him for you before I even know you. And can't wait to love you in the best way I know how for the rest of our lives. I pray you know and feel the importance of my love and hopes for our relationship. No matter what challenges we face, I pray that our trust in God and love for one another overrules the obstacle. May our relationship last forever. Your future wife, Laken. That, Your Honor, was our beautiful Laken. That, Your Honor, is just a glimpse of what was tragically and brutally taken from her and us that day.
Jose Ibarra killed that fine young woman. But it was our government who delivered that man there. And that is just unforgivable. So after the judge in Georgia today sentenced Jose Ibarra, the Venezuelan illegal alien gang member, to life in prison without parole, here's the analysis that appeared on ABC News. This guy, what's his name? Ike Agiochi? Listen to his analysis.
To note that all of this vitriol that we're hearing from Republicans and President-elect Trump regarding the policies of the Biden administration, it's important to know that President-elect Trump did force Republicans to essentially tank a bipartisan border security bill that both sides of the aisle said would have essentially addressed border security and immigration issues, Kira.
That is the way ABC's covering this? that is everything about that, first of all, is dishonest, so deceptive. Laken Riley's killer, Jose Ibarra, comes into the United States in August of 22. In September of 23, he's busted. August of 23, he's busted by the NYPD for posing a threat to a child. He's then released, flown at Biden-Harris administration expenditures, that is taxpayer expense, to Georgia, where he subsequently kills Laken Riley. That bill wasn't even up for consideration until the beginning of this year. And guess what? It didn't actually secure the border. It normalized the flow of migrants into the United States of America. It just said, oh, well, it's not illegal anymore. You can just pour in at greater numbers. And it gave money to Ukraine. It wasn't even a border security bill. It was more about Ukraine's border than it was America's. It was disgrace of a bill. There was nothing bipartisan about it. It was one stupid Republican senator who joined in on this. That's bipartisan. Idiotic. And remember, Joe Biden didn't even know who Laken Riley was. It took Marjorie Taylor Greene during the State of the Union, getting him to even attempt to say her name.
It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner. Not really. Laken Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal.
Laken Riley, he said, and then not even a week later, he would be apologizing to the lefty press for using the term illegal to describe the murderer.
I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
Undocumented.
Undocumented. I should have said undocumented. Sympathy for the devil from Joe Biden, the man who can't leave soon enough. 329. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:35 here. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, we'll be joined by Lisa McClain, the Congresswoman representing Michigan's 9th Congressional District. We're going to talk to her about FEMA and its decision to skip over the homes of Trump supporters. Just absolutely awful behavior. Totally corrupt. John Schweppe is here from the American Principles Project. At 4:30, we talked to him about some of these big picks that President Trump has been making in the last 24 hours. And also Speaker Johnson's decision to protect women on Capitol Hill from men using the ladies' room. And then Matt Rosendale, the congressman, will be with us at 5:30 today, as Biden seems to be dragging the whole world closer to a global conflict. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. All of these so-called legal cases against President Trump are falling apart. The federal cases are collapsing. But those state cases, in some cases are persisting here. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg indicated yesterday that he opposes President Trump's motion to dismiss the New York case now completely. Alvin Bragg suggested that the judge in that case, Juan Merchan, should consider delaying the remaining proceedings. That would be the sentencing of Donald Trump until 2029. Now, almost 5 years is what Alvin Bragg is calling for, claiming that the people are, quote, deeply respectful of the office of the president and are mindful of the demands and obligations of the presidency and acknowledge that the defendant's inauguration will raise unprecedented legal questions. We also deeply respect the fundamental role of the jury in our constitutional system. And then he goes on to argue that he should still be sentenced and that that should happen after his presidency concludes. That's the case Alvin Bragg is making. In other words, he wants this to continue to hang over Donald Trump's presidency, this ridiculous thing. Let me bring in Brett Tollman now. He's a former U.S. attorney and the executive director of Right on Crime. Brett, good to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
What do you make of Alvin Bragg's move? So no sentencing now. We'll just wait for over 4 years. What does that do to a president?
I can't think of anything more unconstitutional than perhaps the bringing of the case in the first place. But let's address, on the merits substantively, what, does he have a leg to stand on? And the reality is, you cannot prosecute a sitting president. We know that. There's a reason why you cannot prosecute a sitting president. Many people have erroneously said that he has a felony conviction. That's not true. The felony does not get entered until the judge issues what's called a judgment and conviction, which does not occur until after the sentencing. So you don't have a convicted felon. He has a right to a speedy trial. He's the incoming president of the United States. I cannot think of any more abuse of power that I've seen in my 35 years of looking at criminal justice systems in this country than what Alvin Bragg is trying to do now.
Yeah, and this is. I mean, there's been so many of these things, but this case involved a dispute over the way President Trump kept his books involving payments to his lawyer and non-disclosure agreements, and that's what we got. This was all amped up to some sort of. As you pointed, not yet, but that's what Alvin Bragg wants. Felony?
Yeah, this is a case he could not bring because of the statute of limitations, just on the straight up merits of the allegation, right. The falsifying his record keeping. So instead, he attempted to use the felony angle, which would allow a longer statute of limitations, and to do that, he had to indicate that the underlying law that he was really trying to break by the falsifying of the records was election law through a payment that was made to somebody pursuant to a non-disclosure agreement. I find this, if people don't see what's really happening, and believe me, they do. We saw the election and how it turned out. This is the attempt to take down the man that the nation wanted as president of the United States, and to use the law to do so.
Alan Dershowitz he has a suggestion for Trump's attorneys. He's recommending that they file a writ of mandamus to the appellate court to basically say that Alvin Bragg needs to either force the sentencing here, and Judge Merchan needs to force the sentencing now, or just get rid of this thing entirely. Do you agree with Alan Dershowitz's assessment here?
Yes. So a writ of mandamus is for extraordinary relief. It's in essence asking the court, saying, look, this is such a unique circumstance that we need extraordinary relief. I don't like the idea of giving them the option of going forward on the sentencing. I think at this point, the dismissal is the only appropriate grounds, given the combination of the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity and what can and cannot be used against the president, and the violation of such during the trial, which I observed myself. There was evidence that was clearly privileged evidence, and evidence that would violate the immunity of the president of the United States. So you combine that with him winning the election, I think, rather than the legal motion of writ of mandamus, I would hope that they could get a ruling to dismiss the case. If they don't, then an immediate appeal to have the case dismissed for both of those reasons.
Do you sense that the higher courts are going to want to intervene quickly on this? Is this the kind of thing where, they feel obligated given the stakes? This involves the president of the United States?
I definitely do at the highest level in the state. The intermediate appellate court may not have the same sense, but your Supreme Court of the state and your Supreme Court of the United States would act very quickly, in my view, in order to avoid this one horrific result, which is a sitting DA taking down a president.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea to avoid that, especially given how frivolous and stupid the charges were in the first place. I mean, it strikes me that what Alvin Bragg is actually doing, doesn't just strike me, but I'm confident of it. He's fully abusing the law in an attempt to hurt a political opponent. And, we've got an entire media establishment that acts like this is totally normal and President Trump must deserve it.
Yeah, there's a normalizing that has gone on that has been particularly offensive to those of us who have sort of seen the rise of it in the criminal justice system. I mean, to put it in context for your listeners, this is akin to somebody taking their criminal code and picking somebody that they don't like, that they personally have, animus towards, and then combing through the code in order to try to bring something against them, in order to take them and punish them because they don't like them. And in what era and in what, under our Constitution, could we ever have imagined that somebody would be doing that?
Yeah. And as a political matter, it blew up in their faces, too. That was the other piece of this. The fact that Alvin Bragg and Judge Juan Merchan decided to make this into a thing and pretend like it was serious, and that courtroom, which they've just absolutely destroyed the dignity of that courtroom in the way that they acted, that all added more support to President Trump. Every day that he stepped out, Brett Tollman, and spoke to reporters before and after each day's proceedings in that court, more and more people were supporting President Trump, according to all the available polling. So as a political effort, this ended up failing big time.
Yeah, and in particular with African-American men. There's no cross-section of our population that is targeted more frequently than African-American men in our inner cities, and they related, and they voted for him in numbers that I don't think the Democrats ever thought was possible. And the reason they did is because they could relate with it. They could relate to what he was going through.
So by the time President Trump takes office, is it your prediction that all of these crazy sort of legal assaults will have fallen by the wayside?
It is my prediction. I am hearing rumblings that Fulton County is considering dismissing their case. Now, I don't know that that's accurate. It's coming from some friends of mine that are there in the area and are plugged in, but that's the first indication I've heard of that, and I think that's a big deal. I think there's considerable problems with Letitia James and her approach to continuing to want to target the president, despite the case, the laughable case that it became, especially to the appellate court. So, Jack Smith, I mean, this has got to be an immediate, dismissal of both cases.
Yeah.
What an absurdity to be pursuing that this man was the instigator of an insurrection, therefore should be prosecuted in Washington, D.C. for his role in election interference and insurrection. And the people just happened to vote him in the next election. I mean, come on, let's get the adults back in the room.
Yes.
Let's get control of the criminal justice system, and let's move on with an eye towards, impartial administration of the criminal law in this country.
I guess if there's any silver lining here, it's one, that they didn't succeed in taking down their political opponent in this cruel way, and two, it just strikes me again that President Trump must have divine providence on his side, because the people who are going after him are some of the dumbest, most clownish people in the whole country. You couldn't ask for bigger morons to prosecute Trump, and it's great that it went that way.
Well, that was well said.
All right, Brett Tollman, thank you. I said it because you couldn't, I guess. All right, former U.S. Attorney, Executive Director on Right on Crime. Good to talk to you today, Brett.
You too. Thank you.
All right, that's Brett Tollman. I do feel that way. I mean, you couldn't pick a more comical group of people. Letitia James and Nathan Wade, unbelievable, just unbelievable. The goons that they picked to go after Trump. I guess it really came down to who are the people with the lowest possible standards that we can get to go after Trump in this awful way. And that's how you end up with people like Jack Smith, who gets his tail handed to him by the United States Supreme Court in a unanimous decision over and over. He's just the guy who's proven that he's got no scruples. He'll do anything necessary, and he'll just keep losing, that's Jack Smith's career. And then you get, Letitia James, and I can't even believe it. They're all goons, aren't they? It's not like they walk into the courtroom and you're like, man, these guys really know what they're doing. That guy's a killer. This is going to be really tough to survive. No, they're like the Three Stooges. They're all poking each other in the eye. It's like ridiculous. I mean, it's so ridiculous that, that guy Leonard, who has a radio show called The Breakfast Club, he calls himself Charlemagne Thagard. Even he says, New York City should really drop this whole case. This seems stupid. Take a listen to this. Here he is on his program this week.
Hey, New York City, just throw the whole thing away.
I don't understand why they playing with that, man.
Cut it out.
Just stop it. We're going to wait 4 years.
Who we fooling?
Yeah, leave it alone.
Nothing's going to happen to Trump. And nobody, wants nobody wants that retribution that he made the liver hanging over their head. He won the election. It is what it is. Cut ties, sever your losses, throw the whole case away. Come on.
I don't know why they playing with him.
Who we fooling, y'all?
Nope.
Who we fooling?
Who are we fooling? And what is Leonard acknowledging in that accurate assessment? This was nothing but an election ploy. It has nothing to do with justice. It has nothing to do with the law or going after Trump for some sort of legitimate violation thereof. No, it was about political destruction. They failed. He won. Let's just make it go away. You're not fooling anybody. Even Leonard can detect that. I started the hour talking about the sentencing today of Laken Riley's killer, Jose Ibarra. Remember, Josh Hawley confronted Alejandro Mayorkas about all of this. And here's what that sounded like.
Now that we have the file, I'll tell you what the difference is. Congressman Bishop didn't have the parole file, and Senator Britt didn't have the parole file. And now we do have the parole file. And now we all know that the reason he was paroled into this country was because lack of detention capacity, which, as you and I both know, is not a valid reason under the statute. And now that we know that for sure, this is right out of the parole file. Here it is. Subject was paroled due to detention capacity at the Central Processing Center in El Paso, Texas. Now suddenly you don't want to talk about it. This is extraordinary. It's also a pattern with you. So let me just try one more time. Have you read the parole file?
Senator, I'm going to give the same answer, and let me say it.
Well, which one? Are you going to give me the answer you gave to Senator Britt? Or are you going to give the answer you gave to Congressman Bishop? Or the answer you gave to Senator Paul? Or do you want to try a fourth one?
Senator, I will not speak to the particulars of the case, given the pending criminal prosecution.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Well, you certainly, of course you don't want to, because it is an absolutely damning indictment of your...
By the way, the case is settled today. Can you talk about it now? Where's Alejandro Mayorkas? I can't. It's a pending case, he said.
Policies. Let's just review Jose Ibarra, and how he came to be here. On September the 8th, 2022, he was encountered by United States Border Patrol in El Paso, Texas, and was paroled into the United States due to lack of detention capacity. A provision, a proviso, a rule that is not permitted under the statute. You and I both know you know this. You knew it when you were talking to Congressman Bishop. You knew it when you were testifying to Senator Britt, and you know it today. You just never wanted to cop to it because the statute doesn't permit it. And so you lied to Congressman Bishop and you lied to Senator Britt. And now you are hiding behind the ongoing prosecution excuse because it's the last one left to you, because you testified falsely under oath.
Yeah, a good grilling of Alejandro Mayorkas by Josh Hawley. Excellent work. And just so disgraceful what the Biden-Harris administration, Alejandro Mayorkas have done. They've got to go. All these guys, they've got to go now. And coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about the abuses at the hands of the Biden-Harris administration. Big hearing yesterday with FEMA, because in the wake of these awful storms, not only is the Biden-Harris administration allowing murderers into the country and then flying them at your expense to the scene of the crime, but they're also skipping over the homes of Trump supporters in their moments of need. Lisa McClain, Congresswoman, questioned the FEMA administrator yesterday. She joins us next here on the Vince Colonnese Show.